Welcome back. It's about time I did another introduction video. I'm Miles from Miles Motoring, and today we're going to cover off some questions that you may get. So for those of you wanting to get into the automotive industry or move within roles, this might be for you. So we're going to look at a few questions that employers have sent in to us. So the first one is introducing yourself and doing short videos. So a lot of employers now enjoy seeing these videos or having somebody talk to them purely on the basis when you're doing sales now that there's been a shift, especially since COVID, where a lot of people won't even see the vehicle before they buy it. The first time they may visit your car dealership is when they're collecting the car. Um, with that, they need to understand that someone has the right video manner or they can speak to a lens, which, if I'm honest, there are so many really, really talented people that can already do this, and I'm just winging it. Yes, I was in the automotive industry for over 10 years. We did every job from a workshop controller to service advisor to service manager to sales executive, digital sales lead. Oh, and a valeter. Don't forget the valeter. That was a very important role. Because to be honest, all those roles are varied, and in a retailer experience, they're very different experiences. However, there is one core element to every job, whether you are working in retail, whether you're in operations, whether you're the driver, whether you're the receptionist, and it's people. So when I get asked what interests me about a role, it's people. I don't worry too much about when you're looking at a brand, when you're looking at the prestige of working for something. It's about the people, because without the right people doing the right jobs, everything else is irrelevant. Um, so that's sort of my core. When people talk about what are your interests in this role, why are you wanting to look at it, and it comes down to people, which then feeds into integrity, trust, relationship building, and it doesn't matter what role you're doing. You can implement that in many different ways. Um, we're just going to move on now and look at some of the key questions that would be asked. So these are typical, and I apologize, and I'll openly admit this. I use the Ryzen framework on Google Gemini, and I've asked it to produce the top 5 common questions across the UK sales car industry. Um, the first one was, can you describe a time when you had to handle a difficult customer or resolve a conflict? What was the situation and what was the outcome? So with this type of question, you want to take a STAR approach. So the STAR method is a technique where it helps answer behavioral interview questions in a structured manner. So you have one, your situation, the task, the action, and the result. So for me, I could use an example of when we were doing digital sales and we were selling cars up and down the UK. We had one vehicle that went all the way from Midlands all the way to Scotland. Customer had never seen the car, and they took it to a garage for peace of mind. It then arose that the problem that they'd gone in for was fine, fixed, sorted, fantastic, but they were made aware that the brakes were low and required changing. Um, so I set the task of the sales executive who had sold the car to go and get me the information. We looked at the inspections from our side. I then doubled that back with our compliance and were we within the right guidances. So you have a certain amount of material that has to be left to be an approved used vehicle. Now, it transpired that we were on the buck, so technically we were fine. However, what action I took was the client was very unhappy at that time because they just spent a lot of money, and I decided that we would get the brakes changed, and we didn't wait for approval from the other end because we were quite lucky. The garage that was doing the work were within our motor group. They did the repairs, got the car back, re-cleaned the car, and presented the car back to the customer in a way that they might have expected to get it in the first place. The customer then, from those actions, was really happy. The service advisor that had been dealing with the situation had obviously been dealing, and being a service advisor in a retail garage or any garage is, in my opinion, probably one of the um, hardest, sorry, it will come, hardest jobs in the motor trade, because you're always dealing with problems, which dealing with problems is not an issue in itself. But when people are upset, there are only cars off the road, they can't get their kids to school, they can't get to work, they've paid so much money for it. Um, it's always a negative experience that you've got to try and flip and turn into a good one. And this service advisor, can't actually remember her name, but she dealt with it really well. The customer had been very, very upset at the beginning, to the point where they were happy. I could see that from my phone calls and emails that I was having with them. So actually, as a thank you, on the Friday, I got some flowers sent from our dealership to theirs. Actually, not from our dealership, but we got a local florist to do it, just to say thank you to the service advisor. So that draws back to what I was saying initially about being people driven. Because actions like that, you build relationships over time, over the years, and that's how you build a successful career in anything. Sales, the longer you're in sales, especially with cars, once you build an affinity with someone or you're able to look after someone and they feel comfortable, they will keep coming back. Now, you get to the very various different types of sales executives. You get some sales executives that are very good at selling cars, but they won't have a huge amount of repeat business, um, because, again, that experience isn't quite right. But then you'll get other people, who will do steady numbers constantly. But the longer they're in the job, the more repeat customers they have, because people enjoy buying from people still. So yeah, that answers the first question. So second question: how do you prioritize and manage multiple tasks or problems simultaneously in a fast-paced environment? So again, no matter what role you're doing, whether it's a sales executive, service advisor, sales manager, head of business, the Eisenhower matrix is a very good, way of prioritizing work. For those of you who don't know, it's a 2x2 square. You've got urgent, non-urgent at the top, and important and not important at the bottom. This can sometimes help when people get sort of muddled and a bit overwhelmed with workload, because that can happen. What I would say is that communication is key. So ensuring that you're communicating with staff members, people that you're working with, or whether you are communicating with the customer, it's always better to be proactive than reactive. So if you're a service advisor and you're managing 15 cars that are in the workshop at the moment, you want to try and ensure that you're proactively ringing your list of customers before they ring the dealership. Because when they ring the dealership, it's probably because they haven't had an update, they want an update, they haven't had a call back. And yes, the job can be overwhelming, it can be very busy, but it is important to maintain those types of communication lines, because actually being proactive and making a 3-minute phone call can prevent a 25, 30-minute hoo-ha later down the line because you haven't addressed something. So that's how I prioritize and manage multiple tasks. It's also, when you're in a management position, very important to be able to delegate and trust your staff. If you ask them, you need to wear multiple hats when you're managing people or managing departments or managing businesses. And depending on the circumstances, it depends on how you prioritize and manage tasks. So question 3. What strategies do you use to stay informed about the features and specifications of the vehicle you sell, or manage or service, and wider industry trends? So what strategy do you use to stay informed about features and specifications? Again, this is more specific to if you're working at a main retailer or a manufacturer. Manufacturers will normally have their own in-house training on their products, their yearly car models. You can use journalists, social media now, and obviously what a manufacturer puts out. So magazines, newspapers, podcasts. There is a huge pool of information out there, that is available to help in strategization. My particular interests lie within sort of digital transformation, helping businesses move into the digital age, streamlining processes, understanding customer journey mappings. But yeah, that's kind of my 2 second take on that. Question 4. Describe a successful sales campaign or initiative you led or were a key part of that exceeds targets. What was your specific role and how did you measure success? So in 2021, I was made redundant from a role in digital car sales, and I was very fortunate. Within the first 2 weeks of redundancy, I was offered another job as a digital sales leader. So I went in there. It was just before the second lockdown, and at that time we had a full sales team. We had a couple of business managers, and with the whole lockdown coming in, our head of business at the time was looking at furlough schemes. One of the things I did is I spoke to the head of business and I said, what number of cars do we need to be selling to retain our sales team? And because digital sales at that point was quite new, it was a one-man department, and what we ended up doing was creating processes where we were taking the inquiries in that were coming in online, we were actioning them, we were sending out videos, we were communicating with the customers. But my proudest measurement of success for that was not only did we sell a very, very good number of used and new cars over that period, we retained all our sales staff. Not one of them went on furlough. So that for me was success. That was the first time I drew up sort of a sales process or campaign as to how we would manage it. But since then, I have also done it for a startup company where we engaged and looked at how the customer journey would look, putting in the touch points, identifying any pain points that would need ironing out. But yeah, that's my example of describing a successful sales campaign. And I think it was over 9 months. I can't remember the number now. It was a good number because it was a prestige dealership, and I think we had managed something just over 150 vehicles in 9 months. It was probably more than that, but it was a big number for that time. It is actually on my CV somewhere. Will have to double check that. How do I approach motivation and developing yourself or your team to maintain a high level of performance? So self-motivation, saying positive words to yourself and trying not to beat yourself up. So there is so much that goes on in the world, and everyone's on their own journey. Everyone's got their own story. Life wasn't made to be easy, but that internal dialogue that we have with ourselves is very important to keep positive. Um, Keep giving yourself those positive affirmations. That makes a massive difference. As for motivations and development, I'm very much with my life experience and what's happened over the past, let's say since 2010, so 15 years. I'm now in a position where I have a vast experience of sales, service, management, business consulting, professional services, and digital transformation. I want to amalgamate all that into one space and try and help others recognize their passions and try and help people. So one of my favorite things about management or any management roles, but you can actually do this in any role, it's removing barriers from other people's jobs so that they can perform better. So to me, when somebody says what makes a good manager, some of the best managers that I've worked for in the past remove barriers that make your job difficult. And by doing that, you then have more time to spend with the customer, or by spending more time with the customer, they have a better experience. Um, or there might be something within a process that makes that customer experience not be as smooth. Well, then you take a look and you see whether it's something that is to do with compliance or whether it's something that could be done slightly differently that still does everything right. Because obviously, motor trade, it's a regulated industry, governance risk, GRC is obviously very popular in the corporate world, if you like. And it's just ensuring that those items are right. But trying to drive people to success. When you find you have a happy and coherent workforce, everything else becomes a lot easier, i.e. sales targets or selling insurance products. I find that one of my favourite topics is gap insurance. And obviously it's a regulated product by the FCA. Garages, typically, they shouldn't incentivize it to salesmen. So sometimes what you'll see is a garage will say, well, we'll pay you £10 for each product you sell, and then once you've sold more than 10, we'll pay you £40 per product. That actually doesn't comply with what the FCA say. So what they should be doing is explaining what gap is to a customer and giving the customer the options to decide themselves without any bias what they need or don't need. Because some customers, so NFU were an insurance company who actually used to offer new for old. I don't know if they do anymore, so please don't look at that. But they used to do gap insurance for the first 2 years. So actually, we used to look at our product and we'd span it over 4 years, where actually depreciation would be more on the vehicle, and look at things like that. But just by laying out that information in a way that is better digested by a customer, it gives them the power to then decide, well, actually, yeah, that is something I want. Because I've had many conversations over the years where people, no, don't want that gap rubbish, don't want that. And I say, that's absolutely fine, but do you understand what it is? And for the most part, people will come back and normally say, well, it's just something that a salesman always tries to sell me. I'm like, well, it's not just that. That's not what the product is for. And also, if somebody takes a 4-year policy, for example, and they change their car after 2 years, well, a gap insurance policy, if it's not been claimed on, you can get a refund, and it's prorated. So they'd deduct the 2 years and they'd refund the 2 years, normally less than admin fee. So if you have any other questions or any other topics you'd like me to cover about the automotive industry, and if you've made it this far, thank you very much. Make sure to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you already work in the automotive industry, please make sure to check out Ben, the automotive industry. They are a great charity that have been around for a long, long time, but a lot of people that work in the automotive industry aren't aware of them. So please do make sure you check them out. Hit that like, follow, and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.